Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, into a world of flickering candlelight, rustling parchment, and the quiet, persistent scratch of a quill on a page. We're going to spend some time in a medieval scriptorium, and I promise you, this isn't the kind of history where battles rage and kingdoms fall. Oh no, this is the history of something far more gentle, far more tedious, and frankly, you probably won't survive this without at least a dozen yawns. We're going to explore the utterly monotonous, yet profoundly beautiful, process of composing a medieval botanical manuscript. Think of it less as an adventure and more as a very, very long nap. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing just inside the doorway of a room that feels both hallowed and profoundly drafty. The air is cool and smells of old leather, drying animal hide, and something faintly earthy like damp soil. You pull your simple woolen tunic tighter around you, your bare feet cold against the flagstone floor. This is your new world. This is the Scriptorium, the beating, quiet heart of the monastery. It's early morning, and the first rays of weak sunlight are just beginning to slant through the high, narrow windows, illuminating dancing motes of dust in the air. The light, however, is a precious commodity, and most of the workspace is still shrouded in shadow. Before you, the room is arranged with a severe sense of purpose. There are long wooden tables, each with a sloping top, positioned to catch what little light there is. At these tables sit several monks, their heads bowed low over their work. Some are copying texts, their quills moving with a practiced, rhythmic grace, while others are bent over pages, carefully applying color to intricate designs. The only sounds are the rustle of a page, the faint scraping of a knife, and the persistent, hypnotic scratching of quills. This is your first day here, and your master, Brother Anselm, a man with a kind but impossibly serious face, has beckoned you closer. Anselm's voice is a low murmur, a sound that seems to blend with the quiet hum of the room. He points a gnarled finger toward a stack of materials piled on a side table. These are the building blocks of your new life, the raw ingredients of the manuscript you will help to create. He holds up a large, stiff sheet of what looks like, well, a very smooth, very pale piece of leather. This, he explains, is the beginning of everything. This is parchment. A mainstream historical fact that might not surprise you is that for centuries, parchment made from animal skins was the primary writing surface in Europe, far more durable and readily available than imported papyrus. It's also a lot more expensive and a lot more difficult to work with than the paper you're used to, a fact that your numb fingers will soon come to appreciate. Anselm allows you to touch it, and you're surprised by its texture. It's not soft and supple like leather, but surprisingly thin, smooth, and almost chalky to the touch. The surface has a subtle grain to it, a slight nap, and a faint, almost buttery smell. It feels nothing like paper. It is, in fact, a carefully prepared animal skin, likely from sheep, goat, or calf. The best quality parchment, made from the skin of an unborn calf, was called vellum and was reserved for the most important and often the most beautifully illustrated manuscripts. Now, that's a slightly grim detail, I'll grant you, but it speaks to the value and reverence placed on these books. The sheer effort that went into preparing a single sheet of this stuff is almost dizzying. It's not something you'll be doing yourself today, but Anselm explains it in a way that makes you feel the labor in his words. The skins had to be soaked for days in vats of lime, scraped meticulously to remove all the hair and flesh, stretched tight on a wooden frame, and then scraped again with a special curved knife called a linellum. It's a process that requires strength, patience, and a surprising lack of a strong sense of smell. I'm thinking you'd probably want one of those fancy medieval nosegays for that particular job. Next, Anselm gestures toward a handful of quills, a small sheaf of feathers. They're geese feathers, their ends sharpened to a fine, delicate point. A good scribe could sharpen a quill to a point that would last for pages, but but most would need to be recut and resharpened several times a day. The sound of a quill being cut is a soft, satisfying rasp, a sound you'll hear often in this room. You run your fingers over the smooth, hollow shaft of one, and Anselm gently guides your hand, showing you how to hold it. It feels alien, unwieldy, nothing like the pens you know. It requires a completely different grip, a more delicate touch. The ink is next. He gestures to a small, heavy pot filled with a deep, liquid blackness. This, he explains, is made from a concoction of oak galls, iron sulfate, and gum arabic. It's a recipe as old as the hills, and it's what will form the words on the page. This is our quirky tidbit for the evening. Oak galls are those lumpy, ball-like growths you sometimes see on oak trees. They're caused by the larvae of gall wasps, and they're rich in tannins, which, when mixed with iron, create a potent, permanent black ink. A medieval chemist would have been proud of this recipe, and you can almost imagine the monks foraging in the woods, not just for medicinal herbs, but for these insect-infested lumps of wood. But the most fascinating part, to you at least, are the other pots. There are a dozen or so small earthenware pots, each filled with a different color. A vibrant, deep blue from lapis lazuli, a shimmering gold from real gold leaf, a rich red from ground cinnabar. The sheer cost and rarity of some of these pigments is staggering. Gold and ultramarine blue were worth a king's ransom and were used sparingly, reserved for only the most important parts of the manuscript. The red, however, is a bit more accessible. Cinnabar, a mercury sulfide mineral, could be ground into a fine, bright red powder. It was beautiful, but also highly toxic. So, while you're daydreaming about your future as a botanical illustrator, remember to not lick your paintbrush. A bit of modern advice for a medieval novice. As Anselm continues to explain the tools, you can't help but feel a little overwhelmed. There are bone folders for creasing pages, pumice stones for smoothing the parchment, a sharp knife for cutting and correcting, and a lead stylus for ruling the lines that will guide your script. This brings us to a minor scholarly debate that still tickles the fancy of historians. Historians still argue whether scribes and illuminators were always distinct roles, or if, in smaller monasteries, a single monk might have had to do both the writing and the painting. Anselm, you gather, is a master of both, but you will start by focusing on one skill at a time, a prospect that sounds both reassuring and terrifying. Your first task is to simply observe. You are not yet ready to write or to paint. You are here to learn the rhythm of the room, to understand the dedication and the patience required. Anselm sits you at a small, empty desk, a fresh piece of parchment before you. It's a small piece, not a full page, but it feels weighty with potential. The light from a window is now a bit brighter, and you can see the intricate detail on a finished manuscript lying open on a nearby table. It's a page from a bestiary, a book of animals, and a magnificent lion, rendered in impossibly fine detail and glowing gold, stares back at you. You trace the lines of the illustration with your eyes, trying to comprehend the thousands of tiny brushstrokes that must have gone into its creation. It looks like a living thing, full of power and grace. The text beside it is equally impressive, the letters perfectly formed, uniform, and impossibly elegant. It looks as if it were printed, but you know it was done by a human hand, one tiny, precise stroke at a time. The patience required to do this work, day in and day out, is something you can only dimly grasp. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and your work will be judged not by its speed, but by its perfection. The day wears on in this quiet, focused way. The sun travels across the sky, and the light shifts and fades. You watch the other scribes work, their bodies bent in concentration. You see a scribe painstakingly ruling lines on a fresh sheet of parchment with a lead stylus, a precise, almost meditative task. You see another monk, a master illuminator, carefully applying a tiny fleck of gold leaf to a miniature painting, his breath held in concentration. You feel the slow, steady rhythm of the Scriptorium seep into your bones. This is a place where time slows down, where the world outside seems to fall away, and the only thing that matters is the page before you. The morning light filtering through the high windows feels different today. Brighter, somehow, and with it a tangible sense of purpose settles in. The quiet hum of the scriptorium is still there, but your mind is focused on something more tactile. Anselm, your master, has led you away from the neat desks and into a colder, damp room at the back of the monastery. The air here is heavy with the smell of wet earth and something acrid and strange, a smell that makes your nose wrinkle. You see a series of large, stone tubs like oversized troughs, filled with a cloudy, milky liquid. The skin on your hands and face feels a little tight just from standing in the same room. Anselm points to the tubs, and you peer in, your reflection shimmering on the surface. Floating in the liquid are what look like large, pale, lifeless sheets. They're animal skins, he explains, raw and fresh from the butcher. They've been soaking for days in a solution of water and lime, a process that helps to loosen the hair and flesh so that they can be easily scraped away. The smell is not a pleasant one. It's the kind of smell that gets into your clothes and stays with you, a smell you'll never quite be able to forget. It's the smell of work, and it's a smell you'll be getting very familiar with. This is your first official task in the making of the manuscript, transforming this rough, raw hide into the perfect, smooth canvas for your art. The durability and incredible longevity of this material is a mainstream historical fact that you're about to learn firsthand. While the papyrus of the ancients would crumble to dust over time, and even early paper would eventually yellow and become brittle, parchment, when properly made, can last for millennia. It's why so many of the great works of antiquity and the Middle Ages still exist today, locked away in climate control vaults. You are not just making a book. You are helping to create a piece of history that, with a little luck, might outlast the stones of this very building. Anselm, with a surprisingly delicate touch for such a grizzled man, pulls one of the limp, sodden skins from the lime bath. The hair on its surface, once a thick fleece, is now loose and easily comes away with a gentle tug. He drapes it over a wooden beam, and you feel the weight and slickness of it. It's heavy and a little slimy, and you suppress a shiver of distaste. The task before you is to remove every single scrap of hair and every last bit of fat and flesh from the underside. You will be a scraper, a tanner, an unmaker of animals. He hands you a peculiar tool. It's a large, curved knife, a crescent moon of steel with wooden handles on either side. It's called a lunellum, and it is your new best friend. You hold it, and its weight feels good and solid in your hands. Anselm shows you how to press the skin flat against the beam, holding it taut with one hand while you scrape with the other. The motion is simple, a smooth, downward stroke, and as you do it, you see the hair in a fine, white creamy layer of flesh and lime come away. It falls to the floor in a sad, wet pile. Your first few attempts are clumsy. You're either too timid and nothing comes off, or you press too hard and risk cutting the skin. Anselm patiently corrects your posture, your grip, and the angle of the lunellum. He tells you to work with the grain of the hide, to feel the resistance and adjust your pressure. It's a physical, demanding job, one that works the muscles in your arms and shoulders in ways they have never been worked before. You quickly learn why the master scribes often have an apprentice to do this part for them. This is the grunt work, the foundation upon which all the elegance and beauty of the manuscript will be built. As you scrape, you start to notice the subtle differences between the two sides of the skin. The outer side, the hair side, is slightly rougher, with a visible grain from the hair follicles. The inner side, the flesh side, is smoother and softer. These subtle differences will be a factor later on, as a skilled scribe will know to always arrange the pages so that a hair side faces another hair side, and a flesh side faces a flesh side, to ensure a consistent appearance throughout the finished book. The thought of all these small, secret rules fills you with a sense of awe. Hours pass in this silent, rhythmic labor. Your arms ache. The smell of the lime is a constant presence, but there is a certain meditative quality to the work. Scrape, scrape, scrape. You begin to get a feel for the tool, for the skin, for the exact amount of pressure needed. You're no longer just moving a knife. You are transforming a piece of flesh into a writing surface. The skin is now completely free of hair and fat, a translucent, pale sheet of wet material. But your work is far from done. Next, Anselm leads you to a large, wooden frame called a hearse. You and he work together to stretch the wet skin over the frame, lacing it tightly with pieces of cord threaded through small holes you've made along the edges. It's a delicate process. Too much tension in one spot, and the skin might tear. Not enough, and it won't be perfectly flat. You pull and tighten, a slow dance of precision and strength. The skin is stretched so tight it begins to look almost transparent, like a window pane made of bone. Once the skin is taut on the frame, the real finessing begins. You're handed a pumice stone, a rough volcanic rock, and a small bowl of chalk powder. Your job is to gently rub the entire surface of the stretched skin with the pumice, smoothing out any remaining irregularities, any bumps or rough spots. It's a quiet, circular motion, a bit like sanding wood. The chalk powder, sprinkled over the skin, helps to absorb any remaining grease and gives the surface a fine, even tooth, a slight resistance that will be perfect for a quill. This is where a quirky tidbit about parchment making comes to light. As you work, you notice a small, dark spot on the skin, a tiny imperfection. It's a scar, perhaps from an insect bite or a minor wound the animal had while it was alive. You instinctively go to rub it out, but Anselm stops you. He tells you that sometimes these imperfections are left. They are part of the history of the hide, a small, secret reminder that this perfect surface was once a living thing. You might find a similar mark in a finished manuscript, and it's a tiny, quiet window into the past, a moment of connection with a long-gone animal. Historians still argue whether these marks were left intentionally as a reminder of the skin's origin, or simply because it was impossible to completely remove every single one without damaging the surrounding surface. It's a debate that's probably still discussed over pints of ale in some dusty academic corner. The pumice stone feels good in your hand now. The work is no longer strange, but a comfortable, repetitive ritual. The smell of the lime is fading, replaced by the faint, dry smell of chalk and parchment. You can see the transformation with your own eyes. The skin is no longer translucent and wet, but has become opaque and firm, a stiff, pale canvas waiting for its purpose. You've worked for most of the day, and the sun is once again beginning to set. Your arms are tired, your back aches, but there is a deep sense of satisfaction in looking at the finished product. You've learned about the two sides, the hair side and the flesh side. You've learned that the perfection of a surface comes from a long, slow process of scraping and smoothing. You've learned that every page of every manuscript has a story that begins long before a single letter is written. But this is still not a page. It's a large, uncut piece of parchment, ready to be trimmed and folded into the right size. As the sun dips below the horizon and the cool air of the evening begins to fill the room, Anselm finally tells you to stop. You've prepared enough parchment for several pages. Tomorrow, he says, we will talk about the very first thing that will touch this surface, the ink, the liquid that will give life and meaning to this carefully prepared skin. The cold, damp smell of the parchment room has been replaced with something else entirely, something earthy, pungent, and a little bit bitter. Today, you are back in a main scriptorium, but at a different table, one covered in a chaotic, yet purposeful array of small bowls, pestles, mortars, and curious-looking ingredients. Anselm stands over it all, a faint, proud smile on his face. He is about to reveal the alchemy of the Scriptorium, the true magic that will give voice to the blank canvas you helped create yesterday. Today, you will learn to make ink and pigments. He gestures to a pile of small, rough, woody spheres on the table. You recognize them as the oak galls he mentioned on your first day. They're the size of marbles, sometimes larger, and they look like miniature, petrified brains. He hands you a heavy mortar and pestle, both made of stone. Your first task is a simple one, and it feels a little bit like being a baker. You are to crush the galls into a fine powder. It is a slow, rhythmic work, the sound of the stone on stone a dull, percussive thud that quickly becomes part of the background noise of the room. You can hear the satisfying crunch and crack of the galls as they give way, releasing a faint, tannic smell that reminds you of strong tea. This is the very essence of black ink. It's a mainstream historical fact that oak gall ink was the standard writing fluid of the medieval world, and indeed for centuries after. Its permanence and deep black color were unmatched, and the recipe, in its various forms, was a closely guarded secret of monasteries and guilds. The ink you're making today is a direct link to the scribes who copied the great texts of antiquity. As you finish grinding the galls, you pour the fine, rust-colored powder into a small pot. Anselm then adds a measure of rainwater, which he explains has been collected and saved for this very purpose. The mixture is placed over a low fire, and you watch as it simmers gently, the liquid turning a muddy brown. This slow, patient process is designed to extract the tannins from the crushed galls. It is a work of patience, not of speed. You stir the mixture with a wooden stick, your eyes fixed on the slow, magical transformation. After some time, Anselm takes the pot off the fire and lets it cool. He then adds a pinch of something that looks like white crystals. This is iron sulfate, or vitriol, and it is the second key ingredient. When it hits the tannic liquid, something truly wondrous happens. The liquid, which was a watery brown just moments before, turns a deep, inky black right before your eyes. It's an alchemical reaction, a moment of pure magic that transforms simple ingredients into a rich, permanent color. Finally, he adds a small amount of sticky, viscous substance. This is gum arabic, a resin from the acacia tree. He explains that it is the binder. Without it, the ink would be too watery and would simply run off the page or smear. The gum arabic helps the pigment adhere to the parchment, giving it body and permanence. You stir it all together, and the ink is complete. It's a deep, beautiful black, the color of a moonless night, and it smells faintly of earth and rust. You feel a sense of quiet pride. You have just created a small pot of history. But the black ink is just the beginning. Anselm moves to another part of the table, where the chaos of ingredients is even more pronounced. This, he says, is where the color comes from. The vibrant reds, the deep blues, the brilliant greens that will bring the botanical illustrations to life. The making of these pigments is a different art form entirely, one that requires a deep knowledge of minerals, plants, and even the occasional animal. He holds up a small, precious lump of rock, a deep, beautiful blue with flecks of gold. This is lapis lazuli, the rock from which the most valuable blue pigment, ultramarine, is made. It is a mainstream fact that this stone was so rare and expensive it was worth more than its weight in gold. It had to be imported all the way from the mines of Afghanistan, a journey of thousands of miles, passing through the hands of countless merchants and traders. The use of ultramarine in a manuscript was a clear signal of the wealth and importance of the patron who commissioned it. A truly extravagant color. Of course, not every manuscript could afford such a luxury. So, for a more common, but still beautiful blue, a monk might turn to azurite, a copper mineral that could be found a bit closer to home. Or, if the monastery was more pragmatic, they might even use woad, a plant whose leaves could be boiled to produce a beautiful, if less permanent, blue dye. This pragmatic approach to materials is why you see such a wide variety of colors in manuscripts from different regions and time periods. Next, Anselm points to a small lump of bright red rock. This is cinnabar, or mercury sulfide, and when ground to a fine powder, it makes a rich, fiery red. It is beautiful, but also highly toxic, a fact that would have been well known to the monks who worked with it. You look at it and feel a flash of recognition. This is the color he showed you on your first day. But what about the more common reds? For that, a monk might turn to the natural world around them. Madder root could be ground and treated to produce a deep, earthy red. Brazil wood, another imported material, could be boiled to create a vibrant red lake pigment. It's an endless palette of natural wonders, all waiting to be transformed by skill and patience. The greens are another lesson in alchemy. Anselm shows you a small, green-crusted copper plate. He explains that if you expose a piece of copper to the fumes of vinegar, it will slowly corrode, creating a beautiful green pigment known as verdigris. It is a fascinatingly simple, yet effective process. For a different green, a monk might turn to the plants around them, grinding up leaves and mixing them with a binder. And this brings us to a quirky tidbit about pigment making, a little detail that might make you wrinkle your nose. To make all these dry pigments into a usable paint, you need a binder, something to hold the powder together and make it stick to the parchment. For this, medieval artists often used a mixture of egg yolk and water. Yes, egg yolk. It was a perfect, durable binder that gave the paints a beautiful, matte finish. Another popular binder was animal glue, made from boiling down animal parts, and in some more bizarre recipes, even human urine was used. I'm thinking you'd probably want to make sure your quill didn't touch your face after working with that particular binder. The preparation of these pigments is a slow, methodical process, much like the parchment. The stones and minerals had to be ground down to a powder so fine that it had no grit. A coarse pigment would ruin a quill and leave a bumpy, uneven line. You're shown how to use the pestle and mortar with a gentle, circular motion, grinding and grinding until the powder is so fine it feels like dust between your fingers. It is a work of endless patience, but the result is a pure, unadulterated color, ready to be mixed with its binder. Anselm also shows you a small wooden box filled with impossibly thin, shimmering sheets. This is gold leaf, real gold, beaten so thin it is almost transparent. He explains that applying it will be a different lesson entirely, a different kind of magic, but its preparation is a part of the alchemical nature of the Scriptorium. It is the final, brilliant touch that will make a simple page glow with divine light. As the day comes to a close, and you look at the small, beautiful pots of color you have helped to create, you feel a sense of deep satisfaction. You have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary, the raw into the refined. You are beginning to understand that the real magic of the Scriptorium isn't in the finished book, but in the slow, careful, and often tedious process of its creation. And it brings us to a scholarly debate that still tickles the fancy of historians. You see, these recipes were not always written down. They were secrets passed down from master to apprentice, often only through oral tradition. Historians still argue whether the precise recipes for some of the most vibrant pigments were ever written down, or if they existed only in the memories of the master artisans. The truth is likely somewhere in between, with some basic recipes written, but the finer details and subtle tricks of the trade remaining a spoken tradition. Tomorrow, with your fresh ink and pigments ready, the real work of a scribe begins. You will learn to prepare the page itself, laying out the grid that will hold the words and images. It is the final step before the quill ever touches the parchment. It is the beginning of the end of the beginning. The morning is crisp and clear, and the Scriptorium feels alive with a quiet expectation. The prepared parchment and the pots of freshly made ink sit waiting, silent partners in the grand project. But before a single letter can be written or a single brushstroke made, there is a final, crucial step: preparing the page itself. Anselm hands you a large, stiff sheet of the parchment you helped to prepare, its surface a perfect, smooth canvas. Today, you are an architect of the page, laying the foundations for everything that will follow. Your first task is a geometric one. The large sheet must be cut and folded into a smaller, more manageable size. Anselm shows you how to use a straight edge and a sharp knife to carefully divide the large sheet into smaller, identical rectangles. You fold these rectangles together, one inside the other, creating a small booklet of pages. This is called a quire or a gathering, and it is the fundamental building block of the finished book. The way you fold it ensures that the pages you will eventually write on are arranged correctly, with the flesh side of one sheet facing the flesh side of the next, and the hair side facing the hair side, ensuring a consistent texture throughout the final manuscript. This careful process of cutting and folding is a mainstream historical fact. The quire was the standard unit of assembly for medieval books, and it's a practice that ensured the finished product was as uniform and durable as possible. Once you have your choir, the real work begins. You will need to create a grid of lines, a faint, almost invisible scaffolding to guide your hand. But before you can draw the lines, you must mark where they will go. Anselm hands you a small, sharp tool, like an awl or a needle set in a wooden handle. It's a pricker, and it will be your guide. Your task is to make tiny, almost imperceptible holes along the very edges of the page, one for each line of text you will eventually write. He shows you a master template, a carefully prepared page that has been pricked and ruled already, and you will use it as a guide. You place the template on top of your page, and with a steady hand, you gently prick a hole for each line. The work is tedious and requires intense concentration. Too much pressure, and you will tear the page. Not enough, and the hole won't be visible. It's a dance of delicate precision, and you quickly learn to feel the right amount of force. The sound is a quiet, rhythmic pinprick, a soft tap, tap, tap that adds to the meditative atmosphere of the Scriptorium. You feel your eyes straining to see the tiny holes, but Anselm reminds you that they're meant to be a guide, not a prominent feature. They will be barely visible in the finished book, a secret testament to the quiet effort that went into its creation. Now that the page is pricked, it is time to connect the dots. You're given a small piece of lead, a thin stylus that feels cool and heavy in your hand. This is your pencil, a temporary, faint marker that can be erased or smoothed away if you make a mistake. Anselm shows you how to use a straight edge, a piece of wood as smooth and flat as a plank of glass, to connect the tiny holes you have pricked. Your job is to draw a faint, straight line across the page, a whisper of a line that will serve as the base for your script. The sound is a soft, dry whisper of lead on parchment, a faint, rhythmic rasp that is almost imperceptible. It's a bit like writing in a notebook with a very hard pencil, but the surface is completely different. You spent a long time on this, ruling the horizontal lines for the text, and then the vertical lines that will mark the margins. You are creating the space for everything. The text block, the wide, empty spaces of the margins, and the little boxes where the decorative initial letters will go. This grid, this faint scaffolding of lines, is the silent infrastructure of the manuscript. It is the framework that ensures every page is consistent. Every line of text is perfectly straight, and every illustration has its rightful place. It is a work of pure logic and order. As you work, Anselm explains the careful planning that goes into a page layout. The margins are not just empty space. They are a buffer protecting the text from damage over time. They are also, importantly, a space for notes, corrections, and commentaries. A scholarly note in the margin of a text is called marginalia, a quirky tidbit of the Scriptorium world. These notes could be anything from a simple correction to a complex theological argument, and they were a vital part of the intellectual life of the monastery. Sometimes a scribe might even draw a small, secret doodle in the margin. A tiny face, a small animal, a bizarre little creature with a human head and a long tail. This brings us to a scholarly debate that historians still argue whether these seemingly random images, known as drolleries, were simply the bored scribe's doodles, or if they had some deeper, symbolic meaning. Did a drawing of a tiny knight fighting a snail represent a secret code, or was it just a moment of whimsy, a way to pass the time? The truth, of course, is lost to time, but the mystery adds a delightful layer to the study of these old manuscripts. The long hours of ruling the lines are meditation. Your hand begins to move with a sure, steady rhythm. The cool, smooth feel of the straight edge against the parchment, the dry, whispery sound of the lead stylus, the faint, almost invisible lines that appear on the page. It all becomes a part of you. You're no longer just an apprentice. You are a craftsman, a builder of a beautiful, intricate world. You are learning that the beauty of a manuscript isn't just in the words or the pictures, but in the meticulous, invisible structure that holds it all together. And there is one last, clever detail you learn today. In a finished choir, when the pages are all folded together and ready to be bound, it is easy to get them out of order. So, on the very last page of each choir, at the bottom right corner, A scribe would write a small word or a letter that would indicate the beginning of the next quire. This is called a catchword, and it is a small, quiet secret between the scribe and the binder, a tiny signpost to ensure that the finished book would be in the correct order. It's a simple, elegant solution to a very practical problem, a small bit of human ingenuity that has been replicated in books for centuries. By the time the afternoon light begins to fade, you have ruled several pages. They are not yet pages of text, but they are pages of potential. They are a blank slate, but one that is perfectly prepared and waiting. You look at the faint, shimmering grid on the parchment, and you feel a sense of accomplishment. You have built a silent, invisible world that will hold the words and images of the manuscript. You have laid the foundation. Tomorrow, you will take the ink you made and place the first letter on this page. Tomorrow, the voice of the manuscript will finally begin to speak. The ruled page lies before you, a pristine landscape of faint, invisible lines. You have prepared the canvas, and you have prepared the ink. Today, the moment of truth has arrived. Anselm places a small, beautifully bound book on the desk beside you. It is the exemplar, the master copy you will be replicating. This is a botanical herbal filled with detailed descriptions of plants and their medicinal uses. Your task is to copy the first page of text, to give voice to the silent grid of lines you have created. Anselm hands you a freshly sharpened quill. Its tip is a fine, delicate point, a perfect chisel ready to make its mark. He shows you again how to hold it, not with the tight, hurried grip you might instinctively use, but with a gentle, relaxed hand. The angle is everything. Too steep, and the line will be thin and scratchy. Too flat, and it will be a clumsy smudge. The quill must be held at a consistent, precise angle to create the beautiful thick and thin strokes that are the hallmark of medieval script. He dips the tip into your ink pot, a small amount of the black liquid clinging to the nib. Now, he murmurs, his voice barely a whisper. Take your time. Breathe, and begin. You look at the exemplar, its letters perfectly formed, uniform, and elegant. The script is called Carolingian minuscule, a beautifully clear and round script that was common in the earlier part of the Middle Ages. The text is in Latin, a language you have only a passing familiarity with, but that hardly matters. Today, you're not a reader, you are a copyist. The letters are not words, they are shapes. Your goal is not to understand the meaning, but to reproduce the form with absolute fidelity. You lower the quill to the page, and the moment feels immense. The first contact is a shock of sound and sensation. A soft, dry scraping, the faintest whisper of friction as the quill meets the parchment. The ink flows, and the first line, the first letter, appears. It's a shaky, hesitant, a pale imitation of the master's perfect letter, but it's real. It exists. You have made your mark. The process of learning to write like this is a slow, methodical dance. You learn to make each letter with a series of tiny, deliberate strokes. An I is not one motion, but two, a thin upward stroke and a thick downward one. A C is a careful, curved motion that must be just so. You're not writing, you're drawing. You are a human printing press, and your hand must be as precise as a machine. The silence of the scriptorium becomes a soothing backdrop. You hear the steady scrape of other quills, the occasional rustle of a page, and the soft, almost imperceptible sound of your own breath. This work is a meditation. Your world shrinks to the point of your quill and the small, ruled rectangle of your page. There is only the exemplar, in your own hand, struggling to meet the standard of perfection it sets, and you will make mistakes. This is a guarantee. You press too hard, and the ink pools, creating a clumsy blot. You falter, and a letter is misshapen. When this happens, Anselm gently shows you how to correct your error. You take a sharp knife, and with an impossibly steady hand, you gently scrape away the offending ink from the parchment. The sound is a soft, scratching rasp, and the ink comes away in a fine, dark powder, leaving a slightly rough but clean surface. You then take a small pumice stone and gently smooth the area, preparing it for a second, more careful attempt. It is a moment of correction, a moment of forgiveness, a reminder that the work is not about perfection, but about the relentless pursuit of it. This process of scraping and correcting is a quirky tidbit of the scribe's craft that isn't often considered. A medieval manuscript is not a perfect object. It is a record of human effort, and if you look closely enough, you can often find these tiny, almost invisible scars where a scribe's hand faltered and then recovered. They are a secret history of the manuscript, a testament to the fact that even the most beautiful creations are a work of constant struggle and revision. The exemplar also contains more complex elements. There are ligatures where two letters are joined together, and abbreviations, a kind of scribal shorthand to save time and precious space on the page. You learn to recognize these and reproduce them. The rhythm of the work begins to take over. Stroke by stroke, line by line, you are building the text. The words, once just shapes, begin to form a recognizable pattern. You can't read them, but you can feel their structure. The standardization of scripts is a mainstream historical fact that you are now a part of. The script you are learning is not just the whimsy of a single monastery. It is part of a wider, pan-European tradition. Scribes were trained to use a consistent bookhand so that a manuscript from one monastery could be read and understood in another. This shared visual language was a vital part of the intellectual life of the Middle Ages, allowing knowledge to be passed on, copied, and preserved across vast distances. You are not just learning to write. You are becoming a link in a long chain of tradition. As you work, your mind begins to wander, to fall into a peaceful, hypnotic state. The quiet hum of the scriptorium, the soft sound of your quill, the precise, unchanging shape of the letters, it all becomes a part of the rhythm of the day. You're so focused on the task at hand that the hours seem to melt away. You look up, and the sun is now at a different angle, and the light has shifted. You look down, and a full paragraph has been completed. It is far from perfect, but it is legible. It is a beautiful, if slightly wobbly, copy of the master's work. This meticulous approach to copying brings us to a scholarly debate that still piques the curiosity of historians. You see, while scribes were expected to copy the exemplar with perfect fidelity, what about the illuminators? Historians still argue whether illuminators worked from professional model books of images and designs, or if they were expected to work from memory and their own ingenuity. Were the flowers and plants in your herbal all copied from a pre-made template, or did the artist have the freedom to draw them from real life? It's a debate that touches on the very nature of art and craft in the medieval world, and your role as a copyist puts you squarely on one side of that argument. As the day comes to a close, and the flickering candlelight takes over from the fading sun, you finally lay down your quill. Your hand is cramped, your eyes are tired, but you feel a deep, quiet sense of accomplishment. You have, for the first time, used the tools of your trade to create a lasting mark on the parchment. You have entered the world of the scribe. The first page is only partially complete, a testament to the immense amount of work still to be done, but it is a start. Tomorrow, with the first words on the page, the real artistry can begin. The page now has a voice. The first lines of text, though imperfect, stand as a testament to your careful hand. But the page is still incomplete. There are blank spaces left in the margins, and an empty box waiting beside the text. Anselm gently takes your quill and replaces it with something new. It's a small, delicate brush, its fine point made from squirrel hair, tied with a thin piece of sinew to a wooden handle. It feels completely different in your hand, lighter, more flexible, and full of a quiet promise. Today, you are no longer a scribe. You are an illuminator. The word itself comes from the Latin illuminare, to light up. Your task is to bring light and color to the page, to transform the stark black text into something vibrant and alive. This is the artistry that turns a simple book into a masterpiece. Anselm gestures to a small section of the text you have copied. It is a description of a common medicinal plant, likely one that grows in the monastery's herb garden. He points to the blank box beside the text. Here, he says, his voice a low hum, we will paint the plant itself, not just for beauty, but for knowledge. This is a mainstream historical fact that underscores the dual purpose of these manuscripts. The illustrations were both beautiful works of art and practical scientific documents. In a time without photographs, these hand-drawn images were crucial for accurately identifying plants and their medicinal properties, ensuring that an apothecary could mix the correct remedy. A poorly drawn illustration could mean the difference between a cure and a catastrophe. You start with the colors you help to prepare, but now you must mix them with a binder. Anselm shows you how to gently mix a small amount of the dry green pigment with a tiny drop of water and a pinhead of egg yolk. The egg yolk is the binder, a quirky tidbit of the illuminator's craft that gives the paint its smooth, durable finish. You mix and mix with a tiny stick until the pigment becomes a smooth, creamy liquid, ready for your brush. The scent of the egg yolk is a little bit strange, but it quickly fades into the background, replaced by the earthy smell of the pigment. Your first color is a gentle green, made from a plant-based dye. The color comes from the sap of buckthorn berries, a gentle, subtle green that looks a bit like spring moss. Anselm shows you how to apply it, not with one bold stroke, but with many fine, delicate layers. You lay down a base color, a flat wash of green that fills the basic shape of the leaf. Then you let it dry. Patience is a constant theme here. You cannot rush. You must wait for the page to be ready for the next layer. Once the base layer is dry, you mix a slightly darker green, perhaps by adding a tiny bit of black ink to the mixture. With this darker green, you add shadows to the leaves, giving them a sense of shape and depth. You use a lighter yellow, perhaps made from saffron, to add highlights where the light would naturally fall. You're no longer just filling in a color. You are painting a three-dimensional object onto a two-dimensional surface. You are creating the illusion of reality. This meticulous, layered approach is a hallmark of the illuminator's art. You're not just painting a single color, you're building a color, one careful layer at a time. The work is slow, and your hand is not yet steady. Your first attempts are a bit clumsy. The shadows are too stark, the highlights are too bright, but Anselm is patient. He guides your hand, shows you how to hold the brush with a light, almost weightless touch, and how to blend the colors so that they transition smoothly from one shade to the next. As you work, you begin to see the page in a new way. You are no longer just seeing a blank space. You're seeing a world of possibilities, a landscape of color waiting to be filled. You paint the delicate purple petals of a flower, perhaps with pigment made from orchil moss. You use a rich, earthy red from madder root to paint the stem. Every color has a story, a history of its own, a journey from a plant in the fields or a mineral in the earth to this very spot on your page. This reliance on natural, plant-based pigments could sometimes lead to a curious side effect, a quirky tidbit of the illuminator's world. Over time, these colors would sometimes fade, darken, or even change color in unpredictable ways due to their organic nature. A vibrant green might slowly turn to a dull brown, or a bright yellow might become a faded beige. These changes were a natural part of the life of the manuscript, a silent testament to the passage of time. They make each manuscript a unique object, a living document whose appearance continues to evolve long after the artist's hand has left it. You spend the entire day with your brushes and your palette. You paint a small section of a plant, but it feels like a monumental task. The work is both frustrating and profoundly satisfying. It is frustrating because your hand is not yet as skilled as you would like, but satisfying because you can see the beauty slowly emerging from the tip of your brush. You are building a small, perfect world, one careful layer of color at a time. This meticulous, detailed process of illumination raises a scholarly debate that still intrigues historians. You see, many of the botanical illustrations in manuscript from this time are stylized. They are not always a perfect, photograph-like representation of the plant. Historians still argue whether medieval artists took inspiration from real-life specimens, drawing from observation, or if they were taught to rely entirely on traditional, stylized depictions passed down through generations. Were the plants in your exemplar drawn from a living garden, or were they a copy of a copy, a representation of a representation, an echo of a plant that existed centuries ago? As the day comes to a close, and the scriptorium is once again lit by the soft glow of candles, you look down at your work. You have painted a single, small plant. It is not perfect, but it has a life of its own. The green of the leaves is deep and rich. The red of the flower is vibrant, and the shadows give it a quiet sense of volume. You feel a sense of profound accomplishment. You have brought light and color to the page. Anselm smiles and nods. He tells you that your work today is good, but that there's a next step, an important step. To truly paint a plant, you must know a plant. You must study it. You must look at its leaves, its petals, its roots. Tomorrow, he says, we will leave the confines of the scriptorium. Tomorrow, you will take your tools and you will go outside. The cool, stone walls of the scriptorium are a memory. Today, the world is all around you. The sound is not the quiet scrape of a quill, but the cheerful chirping of birds and the gentle rustling of leaves in a soft breeze. The air smells not of ink and parchment, but of damp earth, blooming flowers, and fresh green things. Anselm walks ahead of you down a narrow path, his simple brown robe blending in with the surroundings. This is a field trip, a journey from the theoretical world of the written word to the messy, vibrant reality of the natural world. You carry with you a small, simple set of tools, a wooden board with a smooth surface, a small bundle of dry-point styluses, and a few linen cloths for wrapping specimens. This is a far cry from the meticulous setup of the scriptorium, and the simplicity of it feels liberating. You're not a copyist today, you are an observer. Your task is to go directly to the source, to look at the plants you will be painting not just as shapes on a page, but as living, breathing things. The path leads you to the monastery's herb garden, a carefully tended rectangle of raised beds filled with neat rows of plants. This is a mainstream historical fact. Monasteries were often self-sufficient, and their gardens were a vital source of food and, more importantly, medicine. The plants here are not wild things, but cultivated treasures, each one with a specific purpose. You see neat rows of sage, lavender, thyme, and dozens of other plants whose names and uses you have yet to learn. Anselm stops at a bed and kneels beside a small, unassuming plant with delicate, silvery leaves and tiny purple flowers. He points to it. This, he says, his voice a low whisper, as if he doesn't want to disturb the plant, is hyssop. It is good for the lungs and for cleansing. He hands you your wooden board and a stylus. Your task is to study it. Not just to look at it, but to truly see it. You kneel down and look at the plant up close. You notice the way the light catches the fine, silvery hairs on the underside of the leaves. You see the intricate structure of the small, almost invisible flowers, how they are arranged along the stem. You notice the veins in the leaves and the way the stem branches. These are not details that would be easily discernible from drawing. These are the secrets of the plant, its true character. Anselm tells you to make a sketch. You place a small piece of parchment on your wooden board and take up your stylus. This is not like writing. This is not about precision and perfect lines. This is about capturing the essence of the plant. You draw a quick line for the stem, a few curved shapes for the leaves. You make small, circular motions to represent the flowers. The sound is a soft, dry scratching of the stylus on the parchment, a whispery sound that feels completely in tune with the quiet of the garden. The sketches are not meant to be perfect. They are memory aids, a way of recording the details you notice so that you can bring them back to the scriptorium. You draw the entire plant, and then you make a separate, more detailed sketch of a single leaf, focusing on the way its veins are arranged. You do another one of the tiny flowers, trying to capture its complex shape. This work is a form of meditation, a focused act of observation that makes the world around you fall away. After a while, Anselm stands and leads you out of the garden and into a nearby meadow. The ground here is a riot of wild grasses and flowers, a beautiful, unruly chaos compared to the ordered garden. He points to a wild, vibrant red flower growing in a thick clump of green. This is the poppy, he says, a plant of both healing and slumber. You are to observe it as well. You notice how different it is from the hyssop. Its leaves are broad and jagged. Its petals are a vibrant, almost shocking red, and they are so delicate they seem to almost shimmer in the light. This is an important part of your work, to understand the unique character of each plant, the way it grows, and the way it looks in its natural habitat. This first-hand observation is what makes your botanical illustrations come alive. This direct, empirical observation brings us to a scholarly debate that still intrigues historians. You see, while many monastic herbals are a testament to this kind of field study, others seem to be merely copies of earlier manuscripts, repeating the same stylized and sometimes inaccurate drawings. Historians still argue whether this direct, hands-on field study was a common practice for all manuscripts, or if it was reserved for specific high-quality projects. Was your exemplar a copy of a copy? Or was it based on the work of a dedicated observer, just like you? As you sketch the poppy, you notice another plant nearby, a small, inconspicuous root-like herb. It is the mandrake, a plant of great renown and mystery, and it brings us to a quirky tidbit of the day. The mandrake was believed to have an almost magical, human-like quality. According to folklore, if you try to pull a mandrake from the ground, it would scream in agony, and the sound would kill you. To avoid this, a medieval herbalist might tie a dog to the plant and have it pull the mandrake free, killing the poor beast instead. Of course, Anselm simply uses a small shovel to carefully dig up a small part of the root, showing you the practicality that often lay underneath the layers of superstition. But the story remains, a testament to the strange mix of science and folklore that defined the medieval world. You spend the entire day in the meadow, sketching different plants, feeling the sun on your back and the cool breeze on your face. You sketch the delicate bell of a foxglove, the broad leaves of a plantain, and the thorny stems of a wild rose. You are learning to see with an artist's eye and a scientist's curiosity. You are learning the shape, texture, and color of the world around you. This work is not just about copying an exemplar. It is about creating a new one based on the reality of the world. As the sun begins to set, you and Anselm walk back toward the monastery. You carry a small pouch of linen cloths, each one holding a carefully wrapped specimen for further study back in the Scriptorium. You feel tired, but it is a different kind of tired from the exhaustion of concentrated writing. It is the deep, satisfying tiredness that comes from being outside, from using your body and your eyes to explore the world. You have spent the day in the sun and the wind, learning to see. Tomorrow, you will bring that seeing back to the page. The smell of fresh soil and green plants clings to your tunic, a quiet reminder of your day in the open air. Now, you stand in a place of deep silence and even deeper history. Anselm has led you from the bustling Scriptorium to the library, a hallowed room lined with shelves of ancient books, each one a testament to centuries of quiet labor. The air here is cool and dry, and it smells not of ink, but of old leather, parchment, and a faint, sweet dustiness. This is where the knowledge is kept, a still, deep pool of wisdom waiting to be drawn from. You and Anselm sit at a long, heavy table, the surface smooth and worn from the touch of countless hands. He takes a key from his belt and carefully unlocks a heavy, iron-bound chest. Inside, resting on a bed of soft cloth, are several of the most precious volumes in the monastery's collection. He lifts one out with the reverence of a man handling a holy relic. The book is thick, its pages yellowed with age, and its script is so old it looks almost foreign. He opens it carefully and points to a series of detailed botanical illustrations. This, he says, his voice a low hum, is a copy of Dioscorides, De Materia Medica. He explains that this is a mainstream historical fact, that this text, written by a Greek physician in the 1st century, was one of the most important sources of medical knowledge in the world for over 1,500 years. Its pages contain descriptions of over 600 plants and their uses, and it was copied and recopied countless times. Its wisdom passed down through generations of scholars, physicians, and, of course, monks. You look at the illustrations and feel a flash of recognition. Many of the plants you sketched yesterday are here, their forms rendered in a stylized, ancient hand. You see the poppy you drew, Its broad leaves and delicate petals are recognizable, if slightly different shape. You are holding a link in an unbroken chain of knowledge, a direct connection to a world that existed over 1,000 years ago. This is not just a book, it is a long, slow conversation between generations. Anselm also shows you a copy of Pliny the Elder's Natural History, another foundational text from classical antiquity. It is a vast, encyclopedic work that covers everything from astronomy to botany. He points out a section on plants, and you see again the familiar forms of the natural world, filtered through the mind of an ancient Roman scholar. This is a place where you can see the deep roots of your work, the intellectual soil from which it all grew. The fact that these monasteries were not just isolated centers of prayer, but were also hubs for preserving and transmitting this ancient knowledge is a crucial piece of the medieval puzzle. But not all the knowledge in these books is correct. Anselm points to a drawing of a fantastic, mythical plant with a human-like head. The text describes it as having healing properties, but also warned that it would scream if pulled from the ground. This, of course, is a quirky tidbit of our evening's journey. You remember the story of the mandrake from yesterday and the bizarre, superstitious beliefs that were sometimes woven into these texts. The fact that such a fantastical detail was copied faithfully for centuries, because the authority of the original author was unquestioned, shows a fascinating tension between scholarship and credulity. And this brings us to a scholarly debate that still occupies the minds of historians. You see, while these ancient texts were copied with reverence, the question remains, how much did monastic scholars critically engage with them? Did they simply copy the text and the illustrations without question, or did they try to verify the information through their own observation? Historians still argue whether the scribes of the Middle Ages were just passive copyists or active scholars, using the ancient works as a starting point for their own research and observation. Your field sketches from yesterday, your direct observation of the hyssop and the poppy, put you squarely on the side of the active scholar, a new link in the chain that is dedicated to truth and observation, not just tradition. Anselm closes the heavy books with a soft, final thud. He explains that these great works of the past are only part of the story. The other part is the wisdom of the local people, the oral traditions of the village herbalist, and the quiet knowledge of the folk. The monastery, he explains, is a bridge between these two worlds. It is a place where the high scholarship of the ancients can be tested and verified against the practical wisdom of the local people. A plant that Dioscoride says is good for one thing may be used by the villagers for another, and it is the job of the monastery to understand both sides of the story. You have a new appreciation for the work ahead of you. You're not just making a pretty picture book. You are creating a document of immense importance, one that will stand at the crossroads of ancient wisdom and modern observation. You are a bridge between the past and the present, a keeper of a long, slow conversation. The plants you will paint will not just be from the page, but from the earth. The knowledge you will record will not just be from the books, but from the heart. As you leave the silent, reverent space of the library, the Scriptorium once again seems to be full of a vibrant, purposeful energy. You have connected your work to a long tradition of scholarship, and the manuscript you are helping to create no longer feels like a simple project. It feels like a living, breathing document, a work of immense importance. Tomorrow, you will bring all of this together, your direct observation and the ancient wisdom, as you begin to add the final, brilliant touches to the page. The monastery is silent, and the Scriptorium is filled with a soft, anticipatory glow. Your pages, with their careful text and small, hand-drawn botanical sketches, lie waiting. They are beautiful, but they are not yet illuminated. Today, you will add the final, brilliant touch. Anselm has cleared your desk and placed upon it a small, flat wooden board. On it rests a thin leather wallet, its contents a secret until now. He opens it slowly, and you feel the breath catch in your throat. Inside, protected by a fine vellum cover, are sheets of what look like impossibly thin, shimmering paper. This is gold leaf. It is a mainstream historical fact that gold in a medieval manuscript was not just for decoration. It was a symbol of divine light, of the sacred nature of the text itself. The gold literally brought light to the page, making it glow in the dim candlelight of the church or the scriptorium. Its use was a statement, a way of declaring that the words on the page were a reflection of the divine, a piece of something eternal. Anselm shows you the first step. You take a tiny brush, smaller even than your finest painting brush, and you dip it into a small pot of something sticky and pale. This is the binder for the gold, a special adhesive often made from a mixture of gesso and animal glue. With a steady hand, you paint a small amount of this binder into the blank box on your page, the one that will eventually hold the decorative initial letter. The binder goes on as a creamy, white paste, and you are careful to create a perfectly smooth, even surface. This is the foundation upon which the light will be built. Once the binder is dry, a process that takes a few moments of careful waiting, it becomes hard and slightly raised, a tiny platform for the gold. Now comes the moment of truth. Anselm shows you how to gently remove a single, impossibly thin sheet of gold leaf from its wallet. It is so delicate that the slightest breath, the smallest puff of air, can send it fluttering away. This brings us to a quirky tidbit of the gilding process. A scribe or illuminator would have to hold their breath, or even work in a room where all the windows and doors were sealed to prevent a stray gust of air from ruining their work. It was a high-stakes, almost magical task, a test of both skill and absolute stillness. With a special tool called a gilder's tip, a brush made of very soft hair, you gently lift the gold leaf. It is so thin that it seems to have no weight at all. It simply floats on the hairs of the brush. You carefully, with a hand that feels impossibly shaky, lower the gold leaf onto the prepared surface of the page. It settles with a soft, barely perceptible hiss, clinging to the binder beneath it. You smooth it down with a soft, clean cloth, and the gold is now on the page, but it is dull and matte, not yet shining. This is where the magic happens. Anselm hands you a burnisher, a small, smooth stone, often made of polished agate, set into a handle. He shows you how to gently, but firmly, rub the burnisher over the surface of the gold. The sound is a soft, satisfying whisper, a low friction that you can feel in your fingertips. As you rub, you watch the gold transform. The dull, matte surface begins to take on a brilliant, mirror-like shine. The light of the room dances and reflects from its surface. It is no longer just a color. It is light itself, captured on the page. The process is hypnotic. You rub, and the gold becomes brighter and brighter. Its surface so smooth and reflective that you can almost see your own face in it. You're not just applying a decoration. You're creating a small piece of captured light. The work is quiet and meditative, but the end result is dramatic and stunning. The contrast between the stark black of the ink and the vibrant, shimmering gold is profound. Once the initial letter is gilded, Anselm shows you how to use a tiny, delicate brush to paint in the surrounding decorative elements. You use the colorful pigments you helped to make to paint small, intricate flowers and vines that seem to grow out of the gold itself. You use a rich, deep red to outline the gold, creating a beautiful contrast that makes the letter stand out even more. The gold is the star, but the colors are the supporting cast, and together they create a beautiful, harmonious whole. This careful use of gold and color brings us to a scholarly debate that still intrigues historians. Was the use of gold in a manuscript purely for religious or symbolic purposes, as a way of representing the divine? Or was it also a way for patrons to display their immense wealth and status? Historians still argue whether the beautiful, shimmering manuscripts were made for the glory of God, or for the glory of the person who paid for them. The truth, of course, is likely a mix of both. The use of gold served a dual purpose. It was a symbol of the sacred, and it was a symbol of power and wealth. You spend the rest of the day adding these final touches, your hands moving with a new sense of confidence. You have learned to write, to draw, and to paint. And now, you have learned to gild, to capture light on the page. The work is slow and meticulous, but the result is a small, perfect piece of art. As the day comes to a close, you look at the page you have worked on. The initial letter, gilded and surrounded by delicate, painted vines, seems to almost vibrate with life. It is the culmination of all your efforts. The parchment, the ink, the observation, the writing, and now the gold. The page is complete, but the manuscript is not just about the beauty of its parts. It is also about the knowledge it contains, and sometimes that knowledge has a touch of the mystical and the magical. Tomorrow, you will take a step back from the physical work and delve into the more mysterious side of the botanical world. The shimmering gold of your work still glows softly in the dim light. The page, with its careful text and vibrant illustration, feels complete. But Anselm, with a gentle smile, shakes his head. A manuscript is never truly complete, he murmurs, until it has captured all of the thing's story. Not just the facts, but the mysteries. He pulls a different book from a nearby shelf, one with a worn leather cover and pages that seem to almost sigh with age. This is not the clean, crisp herbal you've been working on. This is a book of secrets, of folklore, and of beliefs that go far beyond the medicinal. He opens the book to a page with a familiar drawing. It is a mandrake, a plant you encountered in the field. But this illustration is different. It is not a simple drawing of a root and a leaf. This root is shaped like a small, gnarled human, its roots twisting like arms and legs. The text beside it speaks not of its healing properties, but of its magic. It tells the old tale, the one you heard in the meadow, of a plant that shrieks when it is pulled from the ground. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. For a medieval mind, the spiritual and the physical worlds were not separate. A plant could have a practical use as a medicine, and also a powerful, almost living, magical spirit. Anselm reads a passage from the manuscript, his voice a low, soothing drone. The mandrake, when pulled from the earth, doth shriek with such a terrible voice that it can drive a man mad, or even kill him. Therefore, one must take a dog, tie its lead to the plant, and then, with a morsel of meat, call it away, so that the dog's life is given instead of a man's. He closes the book with a soft sigh. It is a quirky tidbit, a story that seems fantastical to your modern ears. But to the people who wrote and read this manuscript, it was a very real and very important piece of its story. He turns the page to another illustration, this one of a common fern. The text describes its use for healing, but then there is a small section devoted to a different kind of wisdom. It speaks of the fern's seed, which was believed to be invisible. According to the folklore, if you could collect the seeds on Midsummer's Eve, when they were said to fall from the plant, you would also be granted the power of invisibility. This was not a scientific fact, but it was a truth to the people who believed it, and it was a truth that was worthy of being recorded in a book. The monastery's role, Anselm explains, was not just to preserve knowledge, but to understand the world as it was understood by the people within it. A scribe was a recorder of all things, not just the things that could be proven with a mortar and pestle. You're shown a drawing of a vervain plant, a simple, unassuming herb. But the text explains its mystical purpose, that it was a powerful protection against evil spirits and could be used in various incantations. It was a plant of both healing and of magic, and its story was not complete without both parts. This is a deep dive into a scholarly debate that still fascinates historians. To what extent did the monks and scholars who recorded this folklore genuinely believe in it? Were they documenting the beliefs of the common people for posterity, or did they themselves see the world through this lens of magic and superstition? Historians still argue whether the scribe was a passive recorder of folk tales or an active participant in a worldview that blended the sacred and the mundane in a way that is hard for us to grasp today. The truth, of course, is probably a little bit of both. Some monks would have been skeptical, while others would have seen the hand of God in every mysterious aspect of nature. The book is filled with these quiet mysteries. Stories of plants that could ward off bad luck, attract a suitor, or give a person the power to speak with animals. There are drawings of mistletoe, a plant that was said to have immense power, not just for its medicinal properties, but for its role in ancient pagan rituals. There are drawings of nightshade, a plant that was known to be a deadly poison, but was also believed to be a key ingredient in powerful flying ointments and other mystical concoctions. It was a world where a plant was not just a plant. It was a symbol, a key, a tool of power, both seen and unseen. Anselm closes the book and places it back in the chest, the heavy lock clicking shut with a finality that feels both sad and reassuring. He explains that your manuscript, the one you are helping to create, will contain both of these worlds. It will have the careful, factual descriptions from Dioscorides and the accurate drawings from your own hand, but it will also have the quiet, humble wisdom of the people. It will be a complete record of the plant, in all its forms, both real and imagined. You look down at your page with its careful drawing of a flower. It no longer feels like just a simple illustration. It feels like a small, contained world, a place where science and magic meet. You have learned that the work of a scribe is not just about making beautiful things. It is about understanding the world and recording it in all its complexity. The work is almost done. The pages are written and illustrated. The final task is not one of artistry, but of craft. Tomorrow, you will take these beautiful, individual pages and you will bring them together, transforming them from a collection of sheets into a single, cohesive, beautiful book. You will take the disparate parts and you will make a whole. The pages lie on your desk, complete. Each one is a small, perfect world of text and color, a testament to the long, slow work of the past weeks. But they're just pages. They are not yet a book. The journey of the manuscript is almost over, but there is one final, crucial step, bringing all the pieces together. Anselm leads you to a new part of the Scriptorium, a place of heavy tools and rough, sturdy materials. Here, the delicate work of the scribe and illuminator gives way to the robust craft of the bookbinder. He shows you a heavy, wooden press, its large screws and thick beams made for a purpose of immense pressure. On a nearby table, you see a collection of materials that are new to you. There are thick wooden boards, cut to size and smoothed with care. There are long, flat strips of leather and thick, waxy thread. There are sharp awls, strong needles, and small, flat pieces of bone. Your work today is not with a delicate quill, but with strength and precision. The first step is to prepare the quires. You take the small booklets of folded pages you made so long ago and place them in the press, aligning them perfectly. Anselm shows you how to use a saw to make a series of small, shallow cuts along the spine of the quires. These cuts are not meant to harm the pages. They are meant to be a guide, a place for the threads to go. The sound is a quiet, rhythmic rasping of wood against parchment, a final, physical act of preparation. Now the sewing begins. Anselm hands you a long, sturdy needle threaded with thick linen thread. He shows you how to pass the thread through the cuts you made, sewing the quires together one by one, a meticulous, rhythmic process that joins them into a single, cohesive block. You learn to make a strong knot at the end of each pass, ensuring that the pages will hold together for centuries. The work is slow and repetitive, but with each pass of the needle, you feel the book taking shape. It is no longer just a collection of pages. It is a single, unified object. This process of sewing the quires together is a crucial part of a mainstream historical fact, the incredible durability of medieval bindings. These books were not meant to be read once and discarded. They were meant to last forever, and the strength of their binding was the first line of defense against the ravages of time. The thick thread and careful sewing ensured that the pages would not fall out, even after centuries of use. It is a work of craftsmanship that is a testament to the value placed on the knowledge contained within. Once the quires are sewn together, they must be attached to the covers. Anselm shows you how to lay the sewn book block between two thick wooden boards. These are the covers, and they are what will give the book its final form and protect its precious contents. You learn how to sew the book block to the covers using thick pieces of cord, a process that is both complex and incredibly strong. It is a final act of joining, of taking the pages and making them one with their protective shell. With the covers attached, it is time for the leather. Anselm shows you how to take a large, flat piece of leather, Soak it in water until it is soft and pliable, and then, with a careful hand, glue it to the wooden covers. You use a bone folder to smooth the leather, working out any bubbles or wrinkles, and then you carefully fold the edges over the inside of the covers. The smell is a rich, earthy scent of leather and glue, a smell that signifies the final, beautiful transformation of book. As you work, Anselm points to a small, unassuming note on the inside of one of the quires. It is a small, handwritten curse. He explains that this is a quirky tidbit of the bookbinder's world, a book curse. These were often written on the inside of a manuscript to deter thieves and careless readers. The curses could be quite dramatic, calling down the wrath of God on anyone who dared to steal or damage the book. One curse might read, "If anyone should steal this book, may he be struck down with a terrible sickness and suffer eternal damnation." It is a sign of how valuable these manuscripts were and how seriously the monks took their preservation. It's a bit of medieval dark humor, a small, final warning to the world. And this brings us to a scholarly debate that still intrigues historians. Was the choice of binding materials and style just a matter of practicality, or was it a way of identifying the workshop where the book was made? Historians still argue whether certain monasteries had a signature style of binding, with specific tools or decorative elements that were unique to their workshop. Was a book with a certain type of clasp or a specific pattern on its leather cover a clear sign of where it was created? It is a small, quiet mystery, a secret language between the binders of the past. The work is long and hard, and your hand are now covered in the small nicks and scratches that come from working with leather and wood. But there is a deep, abiding satisfaction in the work. You have taken a collection of disparate parts, parchment, ink, gold, and pages of text, and you have, with your own hands, made them into a single, cohesive, beautiful object. As the sun sets and the monastery bell rings for evening prayer, you finally hold the finished book in your hands. It is heavy and solid, a tangible weight of history and knowledge. The leather is smooth and cool to the touch. The clasps are tight and secure. You open it and see the beautiful pages you worked so hard on, all held together in perfect order. It is no longer just a project. It is a book. And its journey is now complete, at least for a little while. The next step is for it to find its home and its purpose in the quiet, silent world of the library. The newly bound book feels solid and cool in your hands, a heavy, tangible weight of accomplishment. Its journey from raw material to finished object is complete, but its purpose is just beginning. Anselm leads you down a long, stone corridor, away from the familiar bustle of the Scriptorium and toward a place of deep silence and reverence. The air here is still and smells of old parchment, dry dust, and the faint, sweet scent of beeswax. This is the monastery library, the final home for the book you have helped to create. The room is long and narrow, with high, vaulted ceilings and tall windows that let in a soft, ethereal light. Long, wooden shelves stretch from floor to ceiling, filled with books of every size and shape. There are thick, iron-bound tomes and small, simple texts, all of them silent witnesses to centuries of quiet study and devotion. The feeling in this room is one of profound peace, a stillness that feels almost spiritual. It is a place of preservation, a place where time seems to slow down and wait. As you step inside, your footsteps on the flagstone floor feel impossibly loud, and you instinctively quiet your pace, as if entering a place of worship. You can feel the cold stone through the soles of your simple sandals, a familiar sensation from your time in the Scriptorium, but here it feels different. It feels as though you're standing on sacred ground. The scent of the leather and parchment is so strong here that you can almost taste it, a dry, dusty sweetness that seems to settle on your tongue. The air is still, almost stagnant, as if no one has breathed here for centuries. It is a place of deep quiet, a place for contemplation, not for the messy, vibrant work of creation. The rows of books are a sight to behold. They're not like the books of your modern world, all neat and uniform. These books are of a dozen different sizes and shapes, with different bindings, some simple leather, some elaborately carved wood. You can see the wear and tear of centuries on them, the faded spines, the chipped wood, the leather polished to a dull sheen by the touch of countless hands. Each one of them, you realize, is a story, not just in its text, but in its very physical being. Each one is a testament to the long, slow work of a scribe, an illuminator, and a binder. Anselm guides you to a specific shelf, and as you approach, you notice something you hadn't seen before. Many of the books are attached to the shelves with small, sturdy chains. It is a mainstream historical fact that medieval books were so valuable that they were often chained to their shelves. A small chain would be attached to the cover of the book and then to a metal rod running the length of the shelf. This was not a sign of distrust, but of reverence. It ensured that the book could be read, but it could not be stolen or lost. You run your fingers over the cool, smooth links of one of the chains, and you feel a profound sense of the value of the knowledge contained within. This book, a testament to months of patient labor, was a treasure to be guarded and protected. As you look closer at the chained books, you notice another quirky tidbit of library organization. Many of the books are stored with their spines facing inward, with only a small, simple tag on the foredge, the side of the pages, to identify them. The beautiful, decorated bindings you have just helped to create were not meant to be admired on a shelf. They were a protective shell, and the book's identity was often kept on the less beautiful, but more visible edge of the pages. This was because the books were often read on large lecterns, and the chains would allow them to be pulled out and opened without needing to turn them on their side. It is a sign of a world that valued content over display, a world where a book was not an ornament, but a tool. A book was made to be opened and used, not just looked at. The silence of the library gives you a chance to reflect on the immense journey of the book. It began as a living animal, its skin transformed by a long, slow process into a perfect, smooth canvas. It was then filled with words and images, each one a testament to your careful hand and your growing skill. It was bound and protected, a final, physical act of love and devotion. And now, it is here, in its final home, a silent testament to its creation. The book's work is no longer one of being made, but one of simply being. Anselm points to an empty space on the shelf, a small gap between a thick theological text and a thin book of poetry. Its place, he says simply. You carefully slide the book into the space. It settles there with a soft, final thud, now just one among many. Its new leather and smooth covers a stark contrast to the worn, faded spines of its neighbors. You feel a small jolt, a sudden sense of letting go. This is no longer your book. It is the monastery's book. It is a part of this quiet, ancient world. You are just a temporary guardian, a steward of its creation. The book itself will live on long after you are gone. The book's new life is one of quiet purpose. It will be read by the monks and scholars of the monastery, its pages filled with knowledge that will inform their studies of medicine, botany, and the natural world. It will be a source of wisdom, a guide for future generations, and a reminder of the long, slow work that goes into creating something of lasting value. The book will not die. It will simply wait, a patient, quiet keeper of secrets and stories. And this brings us to a scholarly debate that still intrigues historians. To what extent were these libraries accessible to people outside the monastery? Were they closed, private collections available only to the monks and a select few visitors? Or were they a resource for the wider community, a place where a local physician or a curious traveler might be able to come and consult a text? Historians still argue whether the monastery was a closed community, hoarding its knowledge, or an open one, sharing it with the world. The truth is likely somewhere in between, with some monasteries being more open than others, and the accessibility of the library, depending on the generosity and disposition of the abbot. But for today, the book is at rest, its secrets held safe within these stone walls, waiting for the right person to discover them. You feel a quiet sense of pride as you leave the library. You have created something that will last for centuries. You have added your small part to a long, slow conversation. The manuscript, with its pages of careful text, its beautiful botanical illustrations, and its shimmer of gold, is now at rest. But its life is far from over. It is a living, breathing document, waiting for the right person to open its pages and bring it to life once more. The next step for the book is to become a teacher, a quiet guide for the next generation of scribes and scholars. The days that follow the binding of your manuscript are quiet. You have returned to the Scriptorium, but your work feels different now. The pages are no longer raw material to be transformed, but completed works, a testament to a journey now finished. You find yourself at your desk, once again with a clean page and a newly sharpened quill, but this time, you are not alone. Anselm stands beside you, and with him is a new novice, younger than you were when you first arrived, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. The torch, it seems, is now yours to carry. Anselm, with a gentle smile, gestures to your completed manuscript, which has been brought back from the library for this very purpose. This, he says to the young boy, is the work of your new master. It will be your exemplar. The boy's eyes widen even more, and he looks at the book with a reverence that you remember feeling so well. It is a mainstream historical fact that this was the primary method of scribal training. The apprentice system, passed down from master to novice, was a crucial way of transmitting complex skills and knowledge from one generation to the next. You were not just learning a craft. You were being initiated into a long and honored tradition. Your first task is to explain the book, to guide the boy's hands through the long, slow process you have just completed. You begin with the parchment, the very foundation of the work. You let him touch the smooth, pale surface, and you tell him of the hard, physical labor that went into preparing the skin, of the lime baths, the scraping, and the endless hours of smoothing. You can see the boy's expression shift from simple wonder to a new respect, a new understanding of the immense effort that lies beneath the surface of the text. You then move to the ink. You dip your quill into the black liquid you helped to make, and you show him the alchemical magic of the gall ink, its deep, rich color a testament to the power of nature and chemistry. You let him try to hold the quill, and you see his hand tremble just as yours did on that first day. You gently guide his hand, showing him the correct grip, the precise angle that is required to make a beautiful stroke. You are now the master, and he is the novice, and in this simple act, you feel the weight of a long tradition. This is a moment of quiet, satisfying pride. You're no longer just an apprentice. You have become a teacher. You show him how to use the lead stylus to rule the lines, explaining that the lines are the silent infrastructure of the page. You talk about the marginalia, the small notes in the margins, and you tell him of the importance of leaving space for future generations to add their own wisdom. You talk about the drolleries, the small, strange creatures in the margins, and you share with him the small, secret joke that they were a way for a bored scribe to pass the time. You are passing on not just the skills, but the culture of the Scriptorium. And you realize that your own journey, which felt so long and arduous, is now a map for someone else. You're watching a small boy take the first steps on the path you have just completed. You see his frustration when a letter goes wrong, and you see his joy when a stroke is perfect. You gently remind him that mistakes are not the end, that a scribe's knife is a tool of forgiveness, a way of correcting a clumsy hand and trying again. This brings us to a quirky tidbit of the scribe's world, a small detail that speaks to this process of learning. Many manuscripts contain practice pages or fly leaves, pages at the beginning or end of the book where a new scribe would try out a script or an illustration technique. If you look closely at some of these old books, you can find these tiny, almost invisible records of a new scribe's first attempts. Al clumsy al mishopen be, al poorly drawn flower. These are the small, quiet ghosts of apprentices past, a testament to the long, slow work of learning. As you show the boy your own completed manuscript, with its beautiful botanical illustrations, its shimmering gold, and its careful text, you feel a connection to a long line of masters and apprentices. You are not just teaching a boy to write. You are initiating him into a long, slow conversation that has been going on for centuries. This is the true purpose of the monastery library, of the scriptorium, of all the work that goes into creating a book. It is not just about a single work, but about a tradition. And this brings us to a scholarly debate that still occupies the minds of historians. How much of his training was about rote memorization and copying, and how much of it was about encouraging individual creativity? Did the masters of the scriptorium want their apprentices to be perfect human printing presses, or did they want them to be artists in their own right? Historians still argue whether scribal training focused on strict adherence to a single, perfect form, or if it encouraged scribes to bring their own unique touch to the work. Was a scribe meant to be a perfect copyist, or a new voice in a long, slow conversation? Your work, you realize, is a testament to both. It is a faithful copy, but it is also a beautiful, unique work of art in its own right. You spend the rest of the day with the young boy, showing him the simple, beautiful art of calligraphy. You watch his hand move, clumsy at first, but slowly, surely beginning to find its rhythm. You have completed your journey, but you are now a part of the journey of another. Your manuscript, the one you made with so much care, is no longer just a beautiful object. It is a living, breathing teacher. Its life is just beginning. As the sun sets and you leave the scriptorium, you feel a deep sense of accomplishment. You have not just made a book. You have become a part of the tradition of making books. The next step for the book is a different one. It will not be a teacher to a young boy, but a quiet ambassador to the world outside the monastery walls. It will travel, it will be seen, and it will be a testament to the quiet, beautiful work of this ancient place. The young novice sits at the desk beside you, his hand fumbling with the quill, just as yours once did. You are a teacher, a keeper of tradition. But the manuscript you helped to create is not just a tool for learning within the monastery walls. Anselm, your master, tells you that it is an ambassador. It is a quiet messenger, a silent traveler that will carry the monastery's wisdom far beyond the cloistered walls. This is the final chapter of its life, its journey out into the wider world. He explains that a book like this, with its beautiful illustrations and its careful text, has immense value. It might be a gift to a powerful patron, a wealthy lord, or a bishop who has supported the monastery. A lord who needs to understand the medicinal properties of plants to care for his family and his people. A bishop who wishes to enrich his own library with a work of great scholarship and beauty. These books were not just for the monks. They were for the world, and they were a powerful tool for building relationships and securing the monastery's place in the political and social landscape of the time. The book might also be a loan to another great library, a way of sharing knowledge and building a relationship with a distant community of scholars. A scholar in a far-off city might need to consult your manuscript's illustrations to verify a detail about a rare plant, and your book would be sent on a journey to aid in their research. This exchange of knowledge was a crucial part of the intellectual life of the Middle Ages. Or, in some cases, it might be a sale to a wealthy merchant or a city guild, a way for the monastery to earn money to support its work and its community. The book is now a commodity, a valuable object that can be traded for coin, a testament to the fact that the beauty and knowledge contained within it had a very real, very tangible value. The journey of the book is a mainstream historical fact that underscores the crucial role of manuscripts in the transmission of knowledge across Europe. These books were, in a sense, the internet of their day, the primary method for spreading ideas, information, and artistic styles. A book created in your quiet, northern monastery might end up in a bustling city in the south, its botanical illustrations influencing a physician's practice, its script being copied by a new generation of scribes, and its art inspiring a painter to try a new technique. The book is no longer just a beautiful object. It is a vehicle for culture and ideas, a silent, powerful force that shapes the world around it. Anselm shows you how the book would be prepared for travel. It is a process that is almost as meticulous as its creation. It is carefully wrapped in thick linen cloth, its new leather binding protected from the elements. It is placed in a heavy wooden box, lined with straw or more cloth to protect it from jostling and bumps. The box is then sealed with the monastery's crest in wax, a clear sign of its origin and importance. This is a journey of immense care and caution. The road is a dangerous place, and the book is a precious treasure. The journey itself is slow and arduous. The book is carried by a trusted messenger, a monk or a lay brother, who would travel by foot or on horseback, following the rutted, muddy roads of the country. The journey might take weeks or even months. The book would be jostled and shaken, exposed to rain and sun, and guarded with a vigilance that speaks to its value. You can almost imagine the sound of the hooves on the dirt road, the creak of the wooden box, and the quiet, steady rhythm of a long journey. It is a profound contrast to the quiet, still life the book lived in the library. The book, for the first time, is not a stationary object. It is a traveler, a silent witness to the world outside the walls of the monastery. It is a perilous journey, a grand adventure that you will only ever know in your imagination. And this journey also comes with a charming, quirky tidbit, the librarian's passport. Often, a note would be attached to a manuscript that was on loan, stating its origin and requesting its safe return. This note might read, "This book belongs to the library of St. Bernard, and we ask that it be returned to us at the earliest possible convenience." It is a small, quiet piece of medieval bureaucracy, a tiny, handwritten note that speaks to a world of shared scholarship and mutual respect. It is a testament to the fact that even in a world without telephones or letters, scholars found a way to share their knowledge, to lend their treasures to one another with a quiet, humble trust. The arrival of the book in a new place would be an event. It would be received by a new abbot or a new scholar, and its contents would be eagerly studied. The botanical illustrations, the recipes for the inks, the style of the script, all of these things would be a source of immense curiosity and inspiration. The book would have a new life, a new purpose, in a new place. It would be a link between two worlds, a quiet conversation between two monasteries. You can imagine your book, with its careful drawing of a poppy and its shimmering gold initial, lying open on a lord's desk, its pages speaking a silent language of beauty and knowledge to a world that you will never see. This wider influence brings us to a scholarly debate that still intrigues historians. To what extent did the demand for manuscripts from the wealthy lay population influence the content and artistry of the books being produced in monasteries? As more and more books were being made for a lay audience, did the content shift from purely religious and theological texts to more secular subjects like medicine, poetry, and history? Did the desire for beautiful, lavish manuscripts from wealthy patrons encourage scribes to spend more time on illustrations and gilding? Historians still argue whether the needs of the outside world changed the monastery's focus, or if they were simply meeting a demand for the same kind of books they had always produced. Your manuscript, you realize, is a part of this conversation, a physical object that sits at the crossroads of scholarship and commerce, of faith and patronage. The book's journey is now complete. It has been made, it has been bound, and it has traveled. It has influenced the minds of scholars and the hands of artists. But the life of the manuscript is not yet over. Its story is far, far longer than the lifetime of a single man. The final chapter of its story is its quiet, long life into the future and its rediscovery in a world that is yet to come. The book has traveled, it has been studied, and it has been cherished. But the lives of men are fleeting and the lives of books are long. The monastery that created it may have long ago fallen to ruin, its stones scattered to the wind. The powerful lord who once owned it may have faded into a footnote in history. The quiet conversation between scribes is now a silent echo. Your manuscript, your beautiful living document, continues its long, slow journey through the centuries, a quiet ghost of a world that is now gone. You can almost see its life unfold. It sits in a cold, dusty library for decades, a silent witness to the passing of time. It has moved to a royal court, its shimmering gold now a symbol of a king's power. It is sold to a private collector who keeps it in a dark, velvet-lined room, a secret treasure known only to a few. It survives plagues and wars, revolutions and famines. Its pages a quiet island of order in a sea of chaos. It is a survivor, a testament to the fact that beauty and knowledge can, sometimes, outlast everything else. And then, one day, its journey ends. It is found in a dusty archive, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. A young historian, a woman with a keen eye and a curious mind, find it on a shelf, its simple leather binding hiding the immense treasures within. She opens it, and the scent of old parchment, of beeswax of a world long gone, fills the air. She turns its pages, and the beautiful text you so painstakingly copied, the illustrations you so carefully painted, and the gold you so lovingly burnished, come to life once more. This is a mainstream historical fact that underscores the crucial work of modern conservators and historians. These people dedicate their lives to preserving and studying these manuscripts, often using advanced techniques to learn about their creation and history. They might use a special camera to look at the parchment to see the faint, invisible lines you ruled, or the tiny, almost imperceptible scars where you scraped away a mistake. They might use a chemical analysis to understand the exact composition of the ink you made and the pigments you used. They are, in a sense, a new kind of scribe, a new kind of scholar dedicated to understanding and preserving the work of a world that is long gone. And sometimes they find a little secret, a small, almost invisible quirk that tells a different story. They might find a small note in the margin, a tiny, almost hidden message from a scribe to himself. It might be a simple note, a reminder of a bad day, or a doodle of a strange creature. These small, almost invisible touches are a quirky tidbit of the book's long life. They are a reminder that the person who made this book was not a machine, but a human being with a mind full of thoughts and a hand that sometimes faltered. They are a small, quiet window into a life that has been forgotten. And this brings us to a final scholarly debate that still occupies the minds of historians today. Who was the original audience for this book? Was it for a small, elite group of scholars, a private conversation between a few learned men? Or was it intended for a wider audience, for the local apothecary, for a curious traveler? Historians still argue whether these manuscripts were a part of a closed, intellectual world, or if they were a living, breathing part of the wider culture. It's a debate that touches on the very nature of knowledge and who it is for. And your book, your beautiful, quiet book, sits at the heart of this debate, a silent witness to a conversation that is still going on today. The light begins to fade now. Not the light of the Scriptorium, but the light in the room where you are now. The manuscript's long journey is at an end. It has been made, it has been preserved, and it has been rediscovered. Its story is a long, beautiful one, a quiet testament to the slow, patient work of a forgotten world. The sound of the quill is long gone. The scent of the parchment has faded. All that is left is the quiet whisper of a story that has lasted for 1,000 years. The work is done now. Your journey is complete. You have walked the long road from novice to master, from a blank page to a finished book. The colors of the pigments, the shimmer of the gold, the soft, smooth feel of the parchment, all of it is a memory now, a quiet whisper in the darkness. Let your mind drift from the cool stone of the Scriptorium and the scent of old parchment. Let the quiet hum of the monastery fade away. The journey is over, the story is told. All that is left now is a quiet, peaceful, perfect rest. Let the silence of the library fill your mind. Let the long, slow work of the past be a comfort to you. Sleep now. Let the night take you. Let the long, slow, beautiful journey of the manuscript be a quiet comfort as you drift away.